Kyle, why do you keep banging on that?
I can't understand what this thing is saying half the time.
That's why you're banging on its mouth so much.
I've stayed up all night working on this new voice protocol, so I'm just going to push this little button.
Oh,
Look, those are great sound effects that I've programmed. Hi, machine. How are you feeling?
I feel funny.
Ooh, nope. Let me just.
I don't know what that one.
How are you doing?
What are you doing?
Oh, way too British. Okay, let's go around here.
Not racist at all.
Hi, machine.
I feel too much.
That's the money voice.
Yeah, that's acceptable. I could listen to that.
It's almost like something that I could, I don't know, lay out in post whenever I needed a voice to appear. In his own garage, Kyle has built a machine, cobbled together with parts found in his friend's church basement and a dumpster behind the local Dairy Queen. This monstrosity is now alive and evil. Kyle has convinced his friend Dave to help stop the apocalypse by reviewing films the machine picks. The ultimate purpose is still unknown, and Kyle could have probably done this himself, but he's not being dragged to hell alone. This is Kyle and Dave versus the machine. Welcome to Kyle and Dave versus the Machine. My name is Kyle.
I am Dave.
And I'm the machine.
Dave has been up probably for like 48 hours. I am a well-rested. I had, I think, 6 hours last night. So we are at our tip-top best here to talk about movies here today. And we get to talk a little bit about Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
50 grand, 80 grand, 100 grand, 250.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Four young fellas got in deeper than they could handle.
I imagine that's why I'm here.
Find them, torture them, and kill them.
Who are we doing this for?
You're doing it for me. It's all you need to know.
Like one of those James Bond films.
If you have a better idea how to get 500,000 in the next few days, let us know.
I'm excited. A movie that I don't initially hate. So, machine, the machine is nice today.
I mean, it would be interesting if we, I don't know, watched a bunch of these movies beforehand just to stock up on episodes over time.
Who would do that, though? Who would do that?
Who would do that? If we were to do something like that, I could only imagine how I get to watch you on a week-to-week basis, having your entire soul crumble in front of me as you watch movies that you just do not like.
I'm pretty sure that's why I'm chained to this desk.
I'm pretty sure. Okay, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. I mean, this is a Guy Ritchie film, of course. We'll get into a little bit more about his history here in a moment, but do you recall the first time you even heard of Guy Ritchie?
Yes, it was Snatch.
Oh, okay, so Snatch was your introduction.
Yep.
I definitely remember hearing about Lock, Stock growing up. Again, I've mentioned this in the past, but my theater burnt down when I was a kid. So I had no access to these films growing up. It was not until I went to university. Yes, it was definitely Snatch I watched was probably the first film, but then I saw like Rock and Rolla and...
after, okay.
Well, in theaters. I know I saw that one in theaters.
I actually liked Rock and Roll. I mean,
it's stupid,
yeah,
but I mean...
I'm getting distracted already, yeah.
But he also has, what I've been thinking about, the perception of Guy Ritchie, and I think it's appropriate, but this perception of Guy Ritchie is like he's just like this man's director, right? High action, not many women, just boom, 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 things happening all the time. And what I struggle with a lot is that when I enjoy things that I know do have an air of, I don't know, the problematic thrown into it, I can't help but think it's like I try to be this good person all the time, and yet I'm still drawn to these things that may not be the best. Mm. So does that make me a bad person, Dave? I'm asking you to psychoanalyze me here.
Well, you are a bad person.
Oh, good. Okay, great.
Built a fucking robot that's going to destroy the world.
Okay. It's like no one has made a mistake in their past, Dave.
Move on. Guy Ritchie, the British Michael Bay. No, that's not fair.
That's not fair either.
No, Guy Ritchie actually...
I mean, I know you really hate Michael Bay, but I think Michael Bay has also made a couple of good films in his past, too.
Well, not that we've spoken a lot about this upcoming film we're about to watch, but it makes me reflect, as you brought up with Snatch, that, as Michael Bay was becoming Michael Bay, I liked Bad Boys and The Rock. And then he just decided that he could make millions of dollars making the same movie.
This is something that we repeatedly come to as this machine. thank you, machine, new voice, how revisiting a whole year, revisiting 1999, and really trying to put myself back into that time frame about like, oh, okay, so I was coming at with this life experience, being young, immature still, even though I probably didn't think of myself in that way, and being able to overlook so many different things that as an adult and who has had way more life experience and been introduced to a whole bunch of different outlooks, I'm like, whoa, this is nothing that this does not hold up anymore.
Yeah, having found this movie after Snatch, I wonder how awesomer it would have been if I was still like 20 or 20, whatever it is, and I got to see this in the theater. But yeah, those are weird perspectives, trying to figure out how to get rid of what I think I know now versus what I thought I knew then.
Right.
Is that the right way to put it?
Yeah, no, fair enough. Well, we'll get into more on that. Let's do this. Let's go thank some sponsors in a pre-recorded message. And then when we return, we'll jump into talking about Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
I'm ready.
Hi there, everyone. It's just me, Kyle, again. Dave is inconsolable. You'll hear why later in the episode when he discovers what we're going to be watching next week. But before I have to go back and rub his back because he insists on it, let me talk to you about this week's sponsors. First and foremost, Kyle and Dave vs. the Machine is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. The Alberta Podcast Network promotes and supports Alberta-made podcasts and connects their audiences with Alberta-based businesses and organizations. This episode is brought to you by Park Power, a provider of electricity and natural gas in Alberta that offers low rates, awesome service, and profit sharing with local charities. In Alberta, you get to choose who to buy your energy from. Park Power has low overhead, and chances are you'll save money if you switch. You can find out how much money you would save by visiting parkpower.ca and plugging your numbers into the Alberta Energy Savings Calculator. If you decide to switch, it's easy. Nothing changes about your service, only the price you pay. Learn more at parkpower.ca. This week, Kyle and Dave vs. the Machine is also brought to you by NorQuest College. They've prepared a message for you. I'm going to go and, I guess, help Dave. I'm just trying to find my spare bottle of chloroform. Anyways, here's NorQuest College.
Your next career move is right around the corner, and NorQuest College is here to help. Our new Career Moves professional development program will help you transition to new job opportunities. Funded by the Future Skills Center, we will provide one-on-one coaching, self-assessments, skill development and training, and up to $2,000 in available tuition credit. Our focus is your success. Make your next move. Apply today at norquest.ca/careermoves.
All right. Well, there we go. We got our action on, so to speak.
A lot of sound bites here, Kyle.
I know. It's like, that's all I know how to speak in. I'm going to push this button here, wait for this receipt to print out. Oh, the machine has also informed me here via receipt, even though I have changed its vocoder.
Peter Frampton is alive.
Technical term.
That's a technical term. That we're changing up the format a bit here this week. So we're going to do things in a bit of a different order. It's rules.
It says we obey. We obey.
Bow down, bitches.
So Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels was released on August 28th, 1998 in the UK, but then came over to America on March 7th, 1999. Other major releases that came out that same week were Cruel Intentions, starring Sarah Michelle Gellar, Reese Witherspoon, Selma Blair, and Ryan Phillippe, written and directed by Roger Kumble.
Hopefully we don't have to watch that.
Yeah, that's a bullet that we escaped there, isn't
Definitely
it?
dodged that.
Also, that came out this week was Analyze This, starring Lisa Kudrow, Billy Crystal, and Robert De Niro, written by Kenneth Lonergan, Peter Tolan, and Harold Ramis, and also directed by Harold Ramis. Weirdly, I have never seen Analyze This, even though it is... I thought it had a bit of a moment when it initially came out. I mean, it has a sequel, so I mean...
It's pretty good.
Something.
Yeah, I think I watched that because it was sort of post Goodfellas satire on the. I think that's Analyze This, right? De Niro and Billy Crystal.
Billy Crystal's the psychiatrist.
Yeah, I think I enjoyed it. Although it made me feel like De Niro at the time could only be a gangster.
Yeah, I mean, to a degree, it's still true.
He's funnier now because he doesn't give a fuck. Like, have you seen him on the roasts?
Yeah.
Because he just doesn't care anymore.
I have seen him on Saturday Night Live, and for as good of an actor as he is bad doing live television. Sorry, Mr. Jimmer, I love you. So, Lock, Stock is currently rated 8.2 on IMDb,
Ooh.
66 on Metacritic, and then when you go over to Rotten Tomatoes, the critics give it 75%,
Okay.
and then the audience, the general public, the users give it 93%.
Ooh. Yeah,
So I would definitely say like the general public has a much higher, I don't know, love for this movie than what critics, quote unquote critics, do.
I wouldn't even say much higher. That's not a bad gap.
No,
10,
it's not
10,
like
15 points is reasonable.
The last two Star Wars films have been really interesting to see where whatever
I'm revoking
episode
your Disney fan.
whatever
status.
episode 8 is called, which I have now completely forgotten.
You've lost all credibility on the forums.
It was like 90-something% critics, 50% for general audience.
Wow.
And then that flipped for the last film.
Star Wars is different though.
I know.
Star Trek too. Fanboy thing is
Don't
tainted.
get in the middle of it. Just don't get into the middle of it.
I'm going to take a stand here. No, continue.
Actually, the machine told me the other day that its favorite Star Wars is the Christmas special.
B. Arthur's Bay.
Lock, Stock is available on DVD or Blu-ray. You can also buy or rent it on iTunes. You can rent it via YouTube or Google Play Movies. And it can also be streamed in Canada on Netflix.
Woo.
I believe this is the first movie we've come across that is actually available on Netflix, which is still blows my mind that most of these things are not available via streaming somewhere.
If we lived near a river, we might have been able to catch a message in a bottle.
Oh, yes.
Never mind. Let's keep moving.
Because of water. Its budget was $1.2 million.
Amazing.
Which is $1.7 million our current day. How am I supposed to say it?
Current?
Because of inflation, that's actually equal to $1.7 million today. It's opening. Now, bear in mind, this number I'm about to give you. Go back to Still Crazy. Remember Still Crazy, that movie that we had to see? This is just the UK because it was released in August. It opened to $143,000. Okay? But over time, it grossed in total $28 million.
That's not bad.
No, that's great return.
I'd hope
even
they
if
would be bigger, but
even if they doubled their budget for marketing, they handily made their budget back. That's $40 million today. This movie stars Nick Moran as Eddie, Jason Fleming as Tom, Dexter Fletcher as Soap, and Jason Statham as Bacon.
The birth.
Yeah,
The
birth of Jason Statham.
Was he a diver still? What are some of the memes? Backup dancer? Like they all came out.
He was a dancer. Yeah. Maybe the machine is going to tell us that. Oh, here's another receipt that's printing out. Thank you, Mr. Machine.
I just love Jason Statham.
Nick Moran. Nick Moran was born on December 23rd, 1969. His first movie role was the 1989 German film Hard Days, Hard Nights. Also the name of my autobiography.
Oh, God.
From there, he would appear in a bunch of TV series and short films. This movie was really his breakout role, though. He would be able to use the success of this film to make a career, but if I'm being honest, and this is the machine talking, this is not Kyle saying this.
The robot said, if I'm being honest. Okay,
I get no respect.
There's not a whole lot of stuff that is familiar on his resume, except for his guest spot on CSI Miami. Other than that, it's movies I've never heard of in my entire life. That is until he appeared in a bit part in the last two Harry Potter films. The last film you might have seen him in is Not by the Book, a UK comedy crime thriller. There are some upcoming films that you might be able to see him in, but high on my list, and this is now Kyle speaking again, is Emperor of Broadway, the dramatization of Eugene O'Neill refusing to use blackface and cast an African-American actor to play Emperor Jones. That's Nick Moran. Jason Fleming. Jason was born on September 25th, 1966. His early career was filled with a bunch of English television roles, although he was also on 2 episodes of The Young Indiana Jones. His first film role was the 1994 version of The Jungle Book, the first time that Disney did a live-action version of that film. Do you remember that live action? There was a live-action in 1994, yes. I remember watching this. I don't remember being any good whatsoever.
Do you think it's on Disney Plus?
It has to be.
I'm going to be looking
Search for it and see if it is. I'd actually be interested. If it's not there, I want to know why it's not there. As a young kid, because when 94, I would have been, 11? I would have been 11. I was like, Yeah, love the bare necessities. Let's do this. Live action. Not at all what it was.
Live action Jungle Book from 19.
So Jason Fleming would then go into roles in such movies as Rob Roy, Indian Summer, and most importantly for Dave, Spice World.
Oh, God.
I love Spice World. I'm not afraid to admit it here on Mike. After Lock, Stock, he would continue working and appearing in such varied films as The Red Violin, Snatch, Clueless, and The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, where he played Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. He would also appear with Jason Statham again in Transporter 2 before going on to be in things like Stardust, Kick-Ass, The Social Network, Hannah, and X-Men First Class. When we know a little bit more about the history of this movie we're talking about, we'll know why he was in a lot of those movies. For North American audiences, he may be most recognized as Lord Harwood from the TV show Pennyworth. Currently, he has 6 films in various forms of production. The one that will be the next available for you to see is Creation Stories, directed by none other than Nick Moran, who we just mentioned, and featuring Jason Isaacs and Rupert Everett. Its description is the unforgettable tale of infamous Creation Records label head Alan McGee, and of how one written-off young Glaswegian upstart rose to irrevocably change the face of British culture.
You pronounced Glaswegian.
I know.
Fascinating. How long did you practice
I've
that?
been practicing all morning.
Wish you had done it in like a Celtic accent, but then
Yeah,
we'd
no.
probably get, we'd be in
Hey,
trouble.
no.
No.
Dexter Fletcher. Dexter was born January 31st, 1966. He also appeared in a bunch of TV shows early in his career, although starting much younger than the other two we mentioned. His first role was when he was 9 years old in Bugsy Malone, which came out in 1976. He would also appear in The Long Good Friday, The Elephant Man, and The Man Who Knew Too Little.
Oh.
After Lock, Stock, he would be in Topsy Turvy, the miniseries Band of Brothers, Layer Cake, Kick-Ass, and Muppets Most Wanted. The only upcoming movie is the short film The Agency, which means you'll probably never see it. The Agency is a modern and stylish take on middle-class female empowerment amidst the social subculture described collectively as the ladies who lunch. By the way, nice little side tangent here. The other podcast I do called Putting It Together, there is a Broadway show called Company, and that is the name of one of the songs. No one cares.
You gotta plug it. You gotta plug that shit.
Does anyone still wear a hat?
Also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for Kyle and Dave versus the Machine. Jason Statham. He's the big name nowadays. Back then, he was a nothing. He was a nobody. But Jason was born July 26th, 1967. I think that makes him a fellow Cancer with me, although I'm not quite sure because all that is bullshit. While he has been in a few music videos before this as a dancer,
Beautiful.
Lock, Stock was his first film role. He'd reteam with director Guy Ritchie for Snatch a couple of years later, but he would become an action star with The Transporter and its sequels, plus the Crank series. But he'd also do The Italian Job, Collateral, The Bank Job, which I didn't realize how much I love Jason Statham, I don't think, until I started listing out some of these movies.
He's awesome.
He would show off his comedy skills in Spy, but then he would go on to join the Fast and Furious franchise,
Amazing.
starting with an after-credit sequence in Furious 6, #Justice for Han. He's been in most of the other films of that franchise, plus the spin-off Hobbs and Shaw.
Amazing.
Although I think actually the official name of that is Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs and Shaw.
That movie's amazing. He holds a helicopter with a chain, man.
Captain America did that too.
Well, he wasn't The Rock.
No, that's true. That is true. Next up is another Guy Ritchie film called Cash Truck.
I thought you were going to say something else.
Oh, what did
Because
you
you
say?
held that Cass, and then I thought you were going to go Traded.
Oh,
But no, let's keep going.
The plot follows H, a cold and mysterious character working at a cash truck company responsible for moving hundreds of millions of dollars around Los Angeles each week. This film will also have Josh Hartnett in it. As an aside, he's also going to be in the next Kevin Hart comedy called The Man from Toronto, where they get mixed up for one another and comedy shenanigans ensue.
So, just quickly, I just watched Masterminds, which is, I think, the one with Zach Galifianakis and Kristen Wiig. And
I have not heard. I don't even know if I know this movie.
So there's it's not a popular comedy.
Yeah, right.
But it's apparently based on a true story where a security truck driver decides, or is conned or whatever, joins a group of people to steal money from the bank. But the two things that's fascinating is that it sounds like Jason Statham is going to do Guy Ritchie and Jason Statham are going to do a hard-edged version of that. But also, one of the key bits in it, not to give too much away, is that Zach Galifianakis is using a fake name and turns out to be the name of the assassin that's sent to kill him. And they end up
mixing things up.
It's pretty funny.
And that's where the comedy happens.
Well,
you describing that was making me laugh. So
that's about the reaction I got watching it. Jason Statham is great.
Underappreciated. I will say this. I think that a lot of the quote unquote action stars gets a raw deal a little bit because I think they're only seen as like, oh, whatever. They just run around and jump over things and things explode. But I find out like a lot of them, like even Sylvester Stallone going like way back in the day, but Jason Statham and there's another person I'm thinking of that I'm now blanking on.
Arnold?
Well, Arnold to a bit, but I don't want to wrap him up in what my point I was about to make.
You're going to talk about
acting.
But
No, I was going to talk about acting, where I think that Jason Statham, yes, he knows that he can play a certain role really well, and he leans into that because people give him money for it. But the guy is really funny too. Like in certain comedies, he is really good. And what I love about that is especially the roles where he pokes fun at himself, because nothing is worse than a self-serious actor who thinks what they do is like the most important thing in the world.
When he came out of Snatch, and I think the first action movie was the Jet Li one. I can't remember what it was, but I think he started learning some form of kung fu and stunts too. But then he put himself in the box. He was going to make a lot more money doing that. And, he looks like a mean, tough guy. But I always think about Lock, Stock, that opening sequence. Not that we've watched it recently, but it sticks out in my mind when I talk about Statham. He's just got that smooth talking, that charm.
Yeah, there's something about him. I can't figure out what it is. He's both like, I don't know, super intimidating, almost like a dad, kind of attractive, I guess, but also is like he will totally kick my ass if I step in the wrong way.
I have a friend in Toronto. If you ever listen to this, Patrick, I'm calling you out, but he hates Statham. I don't know how we remained friends. And he had boycotted every Statham movie until I forced him to watch. Is this Spy with Melissa McCarthy?
Yeah.
I forced him to watch Spy, and it broke him.
Oh, good.
Yeah, he just makes fun of it. It's amazing.
The Bank Job is actually a great movie too. If you haven't seen it, that is the movie I would actually give to people who think that he's a bad actor, because that one is like just a throwback to like a 1970s heist movie, and it's great. This movie was written and directed by Guy Ritchie. This was his very first like feature-length film. Guy was born September 10th, 1968. He had made a short film called The Hard Case in 1995. For his first feature would be this movie, and he knew that he would need some funding. So this is according to Wikipedia, but he did this by contacting Peter Morton. You know who Peter Morton is, by any chance?
Morton, here's a who.
I didn't. It's a parody that we're writing. This name did not ring any bells for me either, but he just so happens to be the co-founder of the Hard Rock Cafe. So he calls him up, sees if he would help finance it, and I won't get into it super far here, but by the sounds of it, his mother and father, this is Guy Ritchie's mother and father, were married to minor members of the royal family for a bit in both their lives.
Of course they were.
So I think he had money. Like he grew up rich. So this was not like a case of like, oh, I'm a scrappy guy calling this guy up. It was like, no, my parents know him and I'm going to call him up.
We know some people.
Yeah. Anyway, so Peter Morton's nephew is Matthew Vaughn.
Ooh.
Matthew Vaughn would go on to direct Kick-Ass and X-Men First Class, which we mentioned here. With the Kingsman, is the big franchise he's working on here now. Matthew Vaughn agreed to help finance Guy Ritchie's film, and this has started their friendship. So this was like a combination of Matthew Vaughn being the producer, Guy Ritchie being the director. And like I said, Matthew Vaughn would go on to have his own career himself. Because this film was a hit, Guy would go on to be able to direct Snatch, Revolver, Rock and Rolla, Sherlock Holmes with Robert Downey Jr., and The Man from U.N.C.L.E. And while he was married to Madonna for a while, he would direct her in a bit of a vanity project called Swept Away, which is awful. It's so bad. He's had a bit of a weird pivot in recent years. He's directed the King Arthur film that nobody remembers, as well as the live-action version of Aladdin. Most recently, you may have seen The Gentleman, which was said to be the return of his signature style, but also a bit racist, but also fun. So that excuses it.
You know what's interesting is I haven't seen The Gentleman, but now that you're talking about how him and Matthew Vaughn are related, I see it in their work.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw the ad for what's the new Gentleman, I thought it was a new Kingsman spinoff.
Thank you. I honestly, we mentioned it so hard because there is actually, so there's The Gentleman, which Guy Ritchie just released here. What is the date right now? Yeah, it got released like a month ago.
Right.
But there's also The Kingsman coming out, directed by Matthew Vaughn, which is a spinoff of.
There's
of
another
The
Kingsman movie.
Yeah, but it's a prequel, so it's like
Of course it is.
happening back. Anyways, whatever.
Well,
It doesn't matter.
You got to go back. You always got to go back.
Do you though?
I
Do I have to like start yelling at prequels and why I think they're the worst things?
well,
Even worse than sequels. I think.
yeah, we won't get into Star Wars because then we'll get incensed. I'll just quickly add this just to piss you off in a Tarantino-esque way. I was really enjoying Kingsman, and I admit the way the church scene is shot is incredible. Jesus, like he didn't need to do so much.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I keep hearing that criticism of how that church scene in the first Kingsman film is so shocking and violent. Maybe I'm just the desensitized one more so than I think I am.
You're like humming a bright tune.
Not so much of that, but maybe it's just my thing too with digital blood, which that scene has so much of, where it's like, oh, this is totally not real whatsoever. If they had used like blood packs or something like that, then I would maybe have been like, oh, whoa, this is getting super gruesome. But for me, it's just like, nope, that was not a real bullet that just went through that person's face.
I think for me, it wasn't the visual thing because we've watched other movies of in our lifetime with visual, grossness. It's just the
Cruel Intentions, yeah.
It just seemed so. Wait, have we watched Cruel? So
Who knows?
We fucking fourth wall. So I think I haven't watched it again, but I just felt like the way it was ramping up is,
Yeah.
super.
Anyways, this is not a podcast about Kingsman.
Yeah.
Next up, as you know, Guy Ritchie is going to direct Cash Truck. So the plot description of Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels is this. It's the story of a heist involving a self-confident young card shark who loses £500,000 to a powerful crime lord in a rigged game of three-card brag. To pay off his debts, he and his friends decide to rob a small-time gang who happen to be operating out of the flat next door. Okay.
Oh, I need a nap.
Yeah, we have spent a bit of time talking about this. Let's start here. What do you love about this movie? What did you like about this movie?
Wait, have we watched it?
Yeah.
Oh.
We've already watched it.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I'm trying to separate from nostalgia. I just love this movie.
Let's break this down in both ways though. What did you enjoy about this movie today in the year 2020?
I think that it remains authentic to itself. I know that's a very annoying way to put it, but it still feels gritty. It's still like, I love that it's low budge and it looks low budge, but it works. It doesn't feel low budge in the sense that like you lose contact with the material. I love the way it's shot and that now it's a stereotypical Guy Ritchie thing. A lot of great, but even for a budget like that, the intro scene with the slow-mo, the way he'll use changing the rate to introduce character, that stuff's great. Voiceover stuff. It's funny. I am also a fan of the British humor sense of being really cynical in humor. So I think I just enjoy this type of humor where it tends to get bloody. And the characters are fun. I love that the four of them, it sounds like they actually have some kind of relationship. They actually are friends. On screen, the chemistry is incredible between the four main folks. And then who doesn't love a good twisted heist?
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing is
I'm a big fan of heist movies anyways. I just like coming up with the plan, the execution of it. Something goes wrong, obviously. And then how do they figure that out to eventually, hopefully, get the prize at the end of the day? I agree with everything you just said there, Dave. I think that what I appreciate about it now is that there is still this intensity. And I think because of the fact that it's such a low budget film, I mean, in comparison to what we get nowadays, actually, even back in 1999, it would have been considered super low budget too, is that little scrappiness. It's like, I can see that the filmmakers are just using every little bit of money that they had to execute this in the best possible way.
Shortest time possible, as clean as possible. Yeah.
And the fact that again, comes from money too. And apparently this short film actually made itself around a lot of the UK celebrities, I guess, for lack of a better word. which is why you have Sting, why you have Vinnie
I was
Jones,
gonna say
who come into this movie. Like this movie, like we said, cost $1.2 million. Like that's
Yeah.
that's less money than what probably Vinnie Jones made playing soccer for one season.
Yeah, in the movie world, that's
Yeah.
like pennies. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's cool. What do you think though? Like that's nowadays, but going back to 1999, let's say you had seen this movie in 1999, what would you think you would have been attracted to then, or do you think you would have liked this movie in 1999?
Yeah, I think I would have loved it. I think in the way that we talked about Payback, I have always been a sucker for that grit and
Mhm.
fun, mindless violence. You know, as long as there's a fun, comedic lightheartedness about murdering people, it generally translates well on screen for that escapism, if you will. And I also love that the casting, you know, with the four guys, that they're all so fundamentally different. Yeah, even as they evolve through their character things, you know, in that short. I think the movie's only like an hour and 20 minutes, or it's not a very long.
It was.
movie.
I think it's an hour and 40. I
Oh,
think
is it that
what
long? Oh.
Before the credits come up.
So I was enjoying it too much. I thought it was moving by really quick. Yeah, I think like Payback, I would have sat down in this theater and just been blown away by this idea of maybe it should have even just been in black and white. You know, with the tone that it had, it just had that kind of.
Well, that's a good segue because I have no qualms with like the actual direction of this movie and the way that it's filmed, that sort of thing. If we're gonna get into like the weeds of like criticism and being things like this is something that I wish was just done a little bit better. I think we're gonna be a little bit in disagreement here, but I really hate the color grading of this film.
Oh yeah,
like a lot.
You hate it.
If they could take off and I apologize to my mother, but the piss yellow filter that they apparently decided to go with, I don't know. It just it kind of looks ugly, unfortunately, this movie. And I feel like, yes, if you'd done it black and white or done what Guy Ritchie would do in later films, which is just like, let's oversaturate this image as much as we possibly can, I'd be like, okay, cool, stylish, whatever. This type of filter that they decided where it's just yellows and browns, for me, it's just ugly to look at for an hour and a half.
Do you get the sense that that's intent or budgetary? Like it almost feels to me like this is shot actually on a 16 millimeter.
Possibly,
you know, like
yeah.
That might have just been the intent in post. I have no idea. Of course, I'm not a Guy Ritchie, or I don't know. Did he do his own cinematography? Was he his own?
I should look that
director?
up. I'm pretty sure he had his own cinematographer though.
At 1.9 million, who knows? It might have been his flatmate. No, but
that went up in the lorry together.
And then, as we saw with still crazy. I think the British idea, particularly in this coming up era, of what color grading and what appeals to them is a little bit different than
that's actually a great comparison. I mean, not that they have anything the same as far as subject matter goes, but just comparing two British films that we have watched that have come out here in 1999, 1,000 times to one, I'm going to pick to watch this movie that we just watched than ever to have to sit through Still Crazy ever again in my entire life.
For content. Yeah.
Right? And because it's like, oh, okay, so there is some grittiness that's going on here. We can still be super funny. We can still tell a coherent story and a complicated story, really. A criticism I was thinking of actually as I was watching the movie, which I ended up being like, this isn't really a criticism. It really is being too nitpicky. About halfway through, it's like, I don't even know if I do know what's going on right now, because there is essentially 4 different sets of characters we have to kind of keep in contact with and understand how they all relate to each other. And there's still like revelations that happen about how these people are actually related to these people, or related to these people. It's like a snake eating its own tail at the end of it, right? Where it's like the top mob boss eventually gets undone by the most unlikely people in the world, only because of these series of events that got thrown out there just for a rigged card game.
I don't want this to be a nitpick, because Payback is similar, but the way it starts, at some point I'm thinking like, why the fuck, what were they thinking in that poker room in the first place? There's no motivation or explanation why the 4 of them even need or want this money. Particularly, I mean, the chef turns out to be probably a psychopath, but but they're all sitting there grinding.
There is a subtext there for his dad's bar, but I don't think his dad's bar is doing badly.
What, the guys? I thought
Yeah.
that was just from the mob boss. I mean, I thought it was Hatchet Harry that just wanted the block. But
Yeah, he's trying to
feel
like
like
strong arm him a bit.
the only thing that I remember them mentioning is that they were going to make 125. And I almost got the way it was worded. It made me feel like they were putting 100 grand in to come out with 125. In reflection, I think they meant 125 each for the
Yes.
25 buy-in. But even that, like, so there's that was the only thing that was kind of itching me, because by the end, and the whole thing becomes this incredible clusterfuck, and
Oh, yeah.
everybody's just heaped onto each other. I kind of went back to the beginning. I was like, how did this start again? Like,
Yeah.
why are they even involved?
Well, you brought up Tarantino there a moment ago, and the movie that this somewhat reminds me of is Pulp Fiction in a way. Again, totally different styles. Like, they're not similar in that way, but similar in that there's like 5 different storylines really that's going on, and it's like halfway through the movie you might be a little bit confused, and then it's like, oh, okay, we see how these are all starting to fit together, and how one person screwing over one person really hurts this other person over here, and how they all kind of tumble and have basically a bunch of people die in the process of one person kind of making a mistake.
I think too, it's clearly built for a British audience, so there are a lot of implied stereotypes and characters. So we'll find them funny because they're lampooned and played by great character actors.
Mhm.
But if you got 2 guys coming dressed the way the northern thugs, I mean, maybe for a British audience there would have been more subtext to what that meant and what these people are capable of, or what that the stereotype of somebody that looks like. But for us, I just like the perm.
Well, that's the thing too. Like, this is true about something like Payback or film noirs, which is I just enjoy the characters, where it's like I can just hang out with this person more. I want to know more about Hatchet Harry. I want to know more about the Bishop. Anytime a movie just makes dumb like pseudonyms for everyone, I'm like, I'm down for this.
Well, isn't this
I want to know how they got this stupid name.
Well, just to attack you personally, Kyle, isn't that how we get to prequels? Right?
I know.
Wouldn't you
I know,
watch
I
a
know.
Hatchet Harry? Well, maybe not Hatchet. Well, maybe a Hatchet Harry movie.
Maybe I'll watch it. Maybe I'll watch Hatchet
He
Harry.
beat a guy
prequel.
to death with a giant dildo.
That's right. That's
Where
right.
does that come from? Right? What was his family like? How did he grow up?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
one day no.
I will say though too, like, this is now the second movie that we've watched that
Someone got beat to death with a dildo? Oh, sorry.
yeah, it was like this one as well as Office Space. It's really weird deleted scene that
theme.
you don't normally see. No, I was gonna say that deals with the porn industry in a way. Like, we watched 8mm, which we did not like very much, and then there's this movie which has that subtext too. So do you think? This is me a little bit like leading the witness, I know. Do you think this is something to be said about 1999? Like, is this a trend that we're going to start to see in more movies, do you think, about the, I don't know, pornography and that sort of lifestyle, for lack of a better word, being synonymous with, like, the underworld?
I wonder, as an decrepit old man now in 2020, and looking back at the how the last 30, 40 years have evolved or whatever existed, the advent of the internet and the so-called democratization of pornography might actually reflect in the way it starts to appear in mass media. So before, I mean, we see an 8mm and here, there, and we still have them somehow, like on Calgary streets. There are shops that apparently people will walk physically into, and they have
Right.
blocked out blinds and either purchase material, whatever it is that people do in those shops. From my memory, the internet and public access to pornography is sort of like 95 to 2000 before it became what it is today, whatever it is now.
Yeah.
And
It's Web 2.0.
now and then I'm reflecting on that too, because I watched this sort of like a spiritual guru on YouTube, and somebody asked him about sort of the porn industry and masturbation, and he goes, something like he looked into it and it was like over 70% of the full content of the internet is pornography.
Mm.
And so he made the illusion of, like, when you eat bad food, you get diarrhea. So if you consume bad information, you shit yourself. So garbage in, garbage out. And I wonder if there's something to that, where whether it's intentional or unintentional, maybe we're seeing this leak, like even the violence and stuff that we're starting to see in these themes. Again, as much as I bash on capitalism, I mean, this internet thing is also an interesting change in our sociology. Maybe there's beginning to see this crack where we're getting too much information.
You didn't know this, Dave, but this is actually kind of an interesting segue. I was going to leave actually to the end, but I think it's we should bring it up now. Peter emailed us, which you can also email us at kyleanddavevsthemachine@gmail.com. I tried to go for a longer one. It would not let me. But kyleanddavevsthemachine@gmail.com.
Double ats. We should have done double ats.
That's right. So Peter says, like, enjoyed your conversation about 8mm. But something that I was struck with was the entire idea about how porn is looked at nowadays versus what it's looked at in 1999. Now we can see as horrific of stuff that 8mm was kind of vilifying in seconds. And people as young as 5, 6, 7 years old are being introduced to pornography at very young ages. And I don't know if we've truly understood what that psychology is going to do with them growing up. He goes on, but that was the part that I wanted to pull out about the email itself. And I think it is damaging when we do have that access. Not that I think that necessarily all porn is bad, but definitely when it is so easily readily available and we already are like complaining about how real relationships are so hard to attain, when that is what your, the intake is like, this is what love or this is what satisfaction is, when this is not what committed relationships, this is not what that actually is. There's that superficiality that we start to internalize. I don't know. I think there's a lot that's wrapped up into that. And I think that, not necessarily that the lock stock is really focused on so much, but I think it's part and parcel of this idea, right? Where
it does surround the entire narrative. I mean,
yeah. I think pornography back in 1999 was like, we were going to the strippers or we were paying for women. And now that has kind of been transferred in the year 2020 to be like, I click a button or I subscribe to this cam girl or I can pay $1,000 and have them do whatever I ask them to do.
Number one, that same, I can't remember his name. Is Ragadushu. Anyways, he makes the point before even getting into garbage in, garbage out that, like, not specifically pornography, but like sex, masturbation, sort of like all this stuff is natural because we have physical body. So it's not meant to vilify. Like, these are not meant to pass sort of religious prudishness that you should never accept anything. But on a broader scale, even beyond pornography, the democratization of information in general definitely has an effect. Talking about how everybody seems to complain that they can't find true love. I feel like that's increasing, at least in volume, than it used to in the 90s. I mean, everybody complains about being single, but there's still a culture where you still have to physically bump into somebody and interact with them. But as we go into this more...
That's why I just stayed in the bookstore for 12 hours until they asked me, please, you have to leave or buy something. Not
You Got Mail, but there are movies about that too. You can bump into people, but but even in bookstores, I mean, if you're going to bump into somebody that reads as much as you do, or at least fake reads as much to bump into... But
whoa, Kurt Vonnegut? Oh my goodness.
You're enlightened. You're so woke. But yeah, that social structure's changed so much. I don't want to vilify it necessarily. And when we get into this next conversation about whether we can control it, filter it, then you get into bigger problems of like authoritarian and dictatorship type of mentalities where I know what's like, so for example, with my son, it's like, I know that's not good for you. I don't know. I mean, a kid that's growing up in this era, if they're growing up with an iPad or a computer in their hand, that might actually be a benefit. I don't know. In the old days, like, well, it better be a fucking pencil and you better do your math. And so I don't know how to make judgments about any of this stuff.
Yeah, I know. That's
it's evolving.
Well, I learned in a logic class that I took in university.
I failed logic in university. Seriously. Yeah, continue. Surprising. Shocking.
That is shocking because you... No, but using that's a slippery slope as an argument is actually a terrible argument to make because you're not actually using any evidence to back up your claims. Like, oh, that might be a slippery slope to X, Y, and Z.
Right.
So I don't want to say that, which is like, oh, this is obviously making a slippery slope and this is going to lead to world destruction. Well, we all know it's the machine.
It's the machine.
It's going to be leading to world destruction.
So it's Kyle's fault.
It is my fault.
It's everyone's fault.
So yeah, I think you're right in that regard. It's like, who knows? Like, we need so much more research. This is why people get so frustrated with like diets all the time. It's like, have absolutely no carbs. Well, actually, some carbs are okay. No sugar whatsoever. It's like, well, a little bit of sugar is fine. Like, there's always like this conflicting messaging and stuff out there, right? It's like, don't ever eat a potato again in your life. And whatever is going to come out next week or something like that. Whatever Goop tells me to do is how I follow my life.
Don't do that, Kyle. We're already so far away from this movie. This is gonna turn into a full out.
No, I'm trying to bring it back here, which is that what this reminds me of is this whole idea about violence in video games as opposed to like create mass murderers. And there was like the lobbies that came out and slapped the parental advisory language on CDs and stuff like that. And I guess what I'm fascinated by is that Guy Ritchie was definitely criticized for this early in his life. This excessive violence that we're seeing, do you think it has ultimately been proven that there hasn't been an effect?
Of course. Well, proven in that I accept that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, proven is a weird word now anyways, because...
Where's your evidence? I need at least 3...
Yeah, nobody gets
citations
even
to
the
tell
citations are so biased. But to the violence part, I'll say this. I mean, I think we were talking. Yeah, we were at a photography exhibition show several months ago, right?
At least weeks ago,
and talking about galleries and classic art. And if you want to talk about the effect of the visualization of graphic violence on a society, I mean, look at classical art. Since its inception, some of the images that we worship as the greatest murals, when you look into it, I mean, there's like lopped off babies' heads and people being impaled. And, of course, there's a curated version that'll be in a book where it's going to be, like the bust of Venus, etc. But most of the stuff that you go into an actual museum, your kid maybe ought not to look at it because there's stuff that will induce nightmares. But then the reality is...
like Saturn eating his own son's head.
Right. And I was watching YouTube videos with my son about old Greek mythology. And if you like mythology, in the old days, nobody was like an American hero. They all fucking died.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, like you go into not even the sanitized Greek mythology that you are normally introduced to first, but it's like mothers having sex with their sons, or like just killing indiscriminately. It's like, I really want to have sex with him, so I'm just going to.
Dressed up into a bull so I can get... Yeah. Anyways, there's a reflection there anyways. The modern society and its Puritan something wants to blame everything on an other, whatever invisible other is. The fact that they've made such a big deal about movies and video games and music just shows that those people have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is my interpretation. The more I talk with you and other people, I feel bad because, there's all this talk about like find your why and like know what your purpose in life is. I still don't know what that is, and I struggle with that a lot.
Podcasting.
It's podcasting, and please give me money.
Our Patreon site is... Yeah.
That's right. So I struggle with this, and so it takes me a while to, I think, really fully form an impression or my own opinion on different things. But I think where I've really come ultimately to this entire question of like, is this good art? Is this bad art? Is this great for society? Is this terrible for society? Is that it just requires a dialogue to start. You hating Quentin Tarantino and me.
I don't hate Quentin Tarantino.
I was just trying to think of a name.
I hate that you love him so much.
I don't even love him that much. Anyways, that doesn't. We'll have a conversation if we get to 1994. It requires there to be that dialogue here. Like, these are the reasons why this is resonant to me. And I think there is no better example very recently than the movie Jojo Rabbit, where that has been pretty divisive with critics and actually pretty divisive, although pushing more towards the positive end in the audience perception of that movie. Where there are some people who are like, I really hate this movie because of how it makes fun of a very serious topic. And the flip side of that, like, hey, this is satire. Like, this is using a terrible incident and injecting humor into it to make a very specific point, which is kind of where I lay in that. But that also doesn't mean that I can just like blindly push that person away who had a very visceral response to it because like, hey, my family, or I have relatives, or I'm Jewish, and like this is what I felt while watching this movie. I think that's still valid, and I think there still needs to be that dialogue going back and forth. But taking a rubber stamp and saying this is bad, and it's like everyone has to think that this is also bad, is kind of where it's like, okay, there never going to be a consensus on good and bad art. There can only be that dialogue, and whatever survives time over 50 or 60 years, and we're still talking about it, that's what has survived.
I'm certainly not an intellectual wise person. So I was at
We've been able to tell.
I was at my psychiatrist. See, alrighty, good disclaimer. And we were talking a little bit about this because I watched a video on fake martial arts and cults. So we'll leave that for its own conversation, but it's excellent. But the essential point he left me was an interesting one. He said, when a person, particularly that has fear or weakness and denial, ties their ego into a concept or a sort of a descriptive, even word, then they can't ever allow that thing to be wrong, because that destroys their sense of self. And so I think we're now in an age where so many people are so afraid of everything that like Apple versus
Microsoft,
PC. So, when a person likes an Apple device, if they have this weak sense of self, then they're like, well, it's Apple and I can't be wrong. And somebody says, well, this thing's good. I don't care about your fucking RAM. I don't give a shit about, you be able to open the computer out. You're just wrong. And that's something that's becoming more and more prevalent. I don't know, again, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know if that's more prevalent in North America versus Europe, or areas where they have a much longer culture and history of this actually happening over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And people just getting wiser to the fact that, well, look, if you're Germans, like it's not just the Nazis that, there's 1,000 years of us trying in different forms to rule under different types of things, and we keep falling down, getting up. And so there's going to be a little wisdom there. America seems to twist a little more, maybe because we're younger. I don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like you said, if we can break that thing where I have to say that, an easy one for Helen and I is that I'm vegan. We were. That means not necessarily we weren't prophesizing. We weren't going out and telling you to be vegan, but it was like, don't fucking show me your meat. It's like, it's crazy. Like all you're doing is making yourself upset. But if we can just have a conversation and say, okay, well, your food documentary says you should be a carnivore. I have this food documentary that says meat will kill you. And then there's 17 other food documentaries that are saying this. Why don't we just let it run its course, be evolutionary? A self-plug. I just interviewed Sasha Ivanov, I think, and one of the topics
on your podcast,
on my podcast, Perspectives YYC, which is apparently not searchable. Anyways, he's doing evolutionary computing and coding.
Mm.
But the quick thing about that is, as I've been reading with some other history books, the evolutionary scale is in generations and not in our individual lifespan. And I think we just now are looking for answers for ourselves.
Right.
But so, for example, is the internet affecting? Of course it is. Is there a right thing? Just let it run its course. By the time your grandchildren's grandchildren have been there, they'll look back and say, well, whether we tried to do something or not, that's what happened.
Yeah.
And then the right thing, the quote unquote right thing came out, and now we believe the earth is round, and now we believe this. But it's hard to do that because I want to be right.
You know what I feel bad about? The first time I met you and your wife, me shouting, "Look at my meat."
Well, you're full of sound bites.
Yeah, I know. So
Where are we?
To wrap up what we've been talking about and getting back to Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, that's the podcast. We just go off and talk about stuff around the movie a lot of the time. I want to know, do you think that this movie still holds any cultural relevancy?
Yeah, I think so. It actually feels a bit like a period piece, doesn't it? I mean,
and nowadays it does, for sure. Yeah. I think it's the same way that I, at least, when I was growing up, felt about like 60s and 70s films. Like, it's like, oh, very obviously these are shot then. This is like, oh yeah, this is a 90s film that I'm watching. I just had this other thought. I was at a talk with one of the more famous photographers here in Calgary, George Weber, and he made an interesting comment about photography. And he said, if you take pictures and do a lot of posts and you create different effects, that is more dating than a photograph that's just left essentially untouched, and that from a documentarian perspective. And so when you look at, let's say, a movie from the 70s, if it's something that's shot simply and gritty, it becomes kind of like a period sort of reflection of where it is. But then you watch something that's like disco and whatever, it becomes very hard to watch again because it's gimmicks and it's played out, and we're not identifying with whatever the fad was at the time. I have a sense that for me, looking back at Guy Ritchie, Lock, Stock, kind of like Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs, or maybe even Pulp Fiction, before they get too polished, there's something there. Yeah, there's something more connected to where they were and what their original, more childish intents might have been. And then once you get so polished, it becomes more dated somehow.
Like,
I think it is true. I mean, it's the same way I somewhat feel about Jaws. So Steven Spielberg had made movies before that, but that was just like his first like big movie that came out. And it's like you watch that now, and I still love it, but it's like that shark really isn't convincing, except for one scene.
it's not Deep Blue Sea.
But by and large, it's like that's a rubber shark. But what sells that is literally great actors and the phenomenal guy behind the camera telling like this is how I need this film to be shot. Like there was that artistry that was there, and so even though it's like not as slick necessarily as what even Jurassic Park would be, I still rate Jaws higher just because there's I don't know there's something to that. I like to see the edges maybe a little bit of the creation.
You hear that, George Lucas?
Yeah.
I want my squares back or on the TIE fighters.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, that's what made... okay, well, stop.
I don't know. Is there anything else that we want to say about Lock, Stock here? I mean, we didn't really talk much about the film in and of itself. I just think it's an effective heist, like kind of cops and robbers type of movie, although it's really only the robbers that we see. We're not really in the cops area.
Without watching Snatch again, the one thing that struck me that I really liked about this movie is how he plays with time. So I mentioned at the beginning, like, slowing down the frame rate to introduce characters. But even like the Burning Man running out of the bar, and then we learn about
and then we learn about it
after,
later. Yeah,
sequencing like Barry and the gun heist to bring the guns into the final sort of sequence. There's just a lot of slick writing by intent or by edit. I don't know. Those things are very difficult to understand.
From what I've heard, like people who financed this film and helped give it money were influenced because of the idea behind it and how Guy Ritchie sold it. Because the people who read the script was like, this is formatted and probably there's spelling errors all over the place. This is not good. But how you say you're going to do this, totally, we want to see that movie. So what do you think you'd rate this movie? This, of course, will go into the spreadsheet I'm creating, but this is something that you can also view over on our Letterboxd profile. There will be a link to that in the description, but it's just letterboxd.com/KDVSTM.
I'm just thinking, will the machine be jealous of your laptop? You play a lot more on the laptop with your fingers than you do with the machine.
There's a Bluetooth connection between the two of them, so it feels everything.
Gross.
I think, I'm going to go with the 4.
Oh my God.
I don't know.
No, this is a thing. We've been talking about this off mic about how aligned we are all the time.
Yeah.
I also gave it a 4.
Okay, no, let me change. But no, fuck. You know what we need to do?
2. It's a 2.
I don't give it. I loved it. I'm giving it a 2. Yeah, I have to give it a 4.
Okay. Well, I'm giving it a 4 too, which averages to 4 if I'm doing my math right here at least. So that puts Lock, Stock currently in the number 2 spot.
Ooh.
Of the films that we've watched currently in 1999. And like I said, you can go to our Letterboxd and actually take a look at the full list of movies that we have seen. But this is 8 movies. We have 8 movies now on that list.
Man, it's been a long 8 weeks.
It has been 8 weeks we've been doing this.
So hard to keep up to the date. Right?
Yeah.
It's a good thing that the machine is recording all this live.
Sometimes it feels like February, sometimes it feels like March, but who can tell, really?
It's pretty warm, frankly, I'm presuming.
That's right. Do you want to hear some trivia?
Yep.
All right, let's push this button. Let's find out some trivia. Oh, a lot of writing here. Okay. So this movie was dedicated to Lenny McLean. At the very end, it says like dedicated in loving memory. He is the actor who played Barry the Baptist inside the movie. He died of cancer 1 month before the movie debuted.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Apparently, he learned about it while he was filming the role.
Oh, wow.
That he had cancer and he passed away within a few months.
Did he used to be a wrestler? He looks like a wrestler, doesn't he?
He does, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I feel like he at least would be one of those people who like did bare knuckle boxing or something in the carnivals.
Reminded me a little bit of George the Animal or something. That's fine.
On Vinnie Jones's first day of filming, he had just been released from police custody. So he had been arrested for beating up his neighbor, which seems like a very Vinnie Jones thing to do.
Yep.
The film was having some trouble finding an American distributor when Trudy Styler, she was a producer, called an acquaintance of hers, Tom Cruise. He attended a screening and loved the film, Matthew Vaughn later recalled it was hysterical. You had all these mid-level executives sitting there, and Cruise walks in. He saw them all sit up and pay attention, all getting on their phones, and suddenly all these senior executives joined the screening. At the end, Tom got up in front of everyone and said, "This is the best movie I've seen in years, and you guys would be fools not to buy it," and then walked out.
Onto the side of a plane, which he
just
rode out.
grappled onto it and be like, "Take me to Portland."
Actually,
And then
no,
they just
it's
flew
like
there.
98, so he just ran. He just ran all the way
did
back.
the Tom Cruise run, like without not even sweating. He just like did the Tom Cruise run.
I love Tom Cruise. I know. I mean, I'm getting under overtones of Scientology all over this thing, but fuck, I love Tom Cruise. Quick thing, Vinnie Jones was also, I'm pretty sure, kicked out of playing professional soccer for beating up people.
For beating up people. Yeah.
He's great. He's the hooker
Is
with
he
the heart of
though,
gold.
really?
Hooker
Like,
with the
I
heart of
don't know.
gold. You know,
I
he
guess.
crushes a man's head for threatening his son. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
So talking about roles, Jason Fleming is the person who plays Tom in this movie. And I thought it was weird while watching it how the characters are constantly saying how fat he is,
Right.
even though he's like super skinny gentleman. So here's why. Stephen Marcus, who plays Nick the Greek in this movie, was originally cast as Tom. So Nick the Greek is a little bit of a portly man.
Yeah.
So that's why every character talks about him as if he's fat.
It's great.
They just left it in the script, which I actually think is kind of funny.
It works so much better.
It's kind of the same thing as like in Alien, right? How Ripley was originally written as a man, and they just didn't change any of the dialogue and just let her go and stuff like
Female
that.
empowerment.
So, whatever.
It might have actually been designed that way. Smart, Ripley.
Madonna liked the film's soundtrack so much that she contacted Guy Ritchie and Matthew Vaughn and asked if her label, Maverick, could release the film's soundtrack in the U.S. Ironically, Ritchie said that she wined and dined them in Hollywood a few times, but it was Vaughn she was romantically interested in first, not him. So what could have been? Could have been Matthew Vaughn, who made Swept Away instead of Guy Ritchie.
I don't even know how to...
So that is Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. I think we did some good work here. I think it's been a couple weeks here since we've had a good film that we got to watch.
It's exciting.
Again, it's not reinventing the wheel. One thing that I've been kind of being a bit annoyed with as far as discourse goes is it seems like people think, this is also my own bubble, I'm going to fully admit to that, but people seemingly think there has to be some like greater thematic point to entertainment that we watch. Otherwise it is bad. And I kind of reject that notion. That can make it great. But I think you can just have a fun movie, just be a fun movie. And I think that's what this is. I don't think it's trying to be anything deeper than it being what it is. And I think that's why I love it so much, is that it is what it is. It literally is just what it is.
I agree with that. I think that there's people that can only read biographies and world history books, and there's people who love fiction, science or otherwise, and fantasy, and they're equally nerdy because they read books.
That's right.
You can't distinguish the two.
They're all Poindexters, and I push them over and grab their lunch money.
But the people that generally write good fiction anyways, and that's very judgmental, are people who are literate and learn in the world. Whether that translates, I mean, we could revisit 8mm in this light. I think we did in that conversation. Whether it translates well onto the screen is the film industry's effect, but you don't need to walk out of theater and just be weeping about like, I'm not doing enough. Fuck. You know, you can come out and just feel good about yourself.
I know. There's only so much entertainment I can watch and be like, you're right, I am terrible. We're all screwed. All right, let's find out what we're watching next week.
No.
This is weird. This
No.
is the first time I think the machine has done this. We're watching a movie that was actually released this week.
Don't say it.
We get to watch Cruel Intentions. I recall being titillated when I watched this movie back in university. I guess we'll see if it holds up at all. Like I mentioned earlier in the show, if people want to get in contact with us, you can send an email to kyleanddavevsthemachine@gmail.com. We're also on both Twitter and Instagram at KDVSTM. So, I don't know. What are you going to do until next week, David?
A lot of meditation.
You went completely silent there for a minute. Ashen, almost, I would say your face is.
Do a lot of centering. I think I need to not think. until we get there.
This is what gets me through the day sometimes. Think about Ryan Phillippe's ass. Just think of...
I haven't seen it.
I guess not yet, technically.
Yeah.
How is podcasting work?